Блять, это вообще...
A dam should hold back water, not destroy armies. But Ukraine proved otherwise. One bold strike turned a quiet reservoir into a catastrophe for Russia, destroying an entire military base. Let me tell you exactly how they pulled off this attack. Tension had been rising around Belgorod for days. You see, Belgorod sits right on Russia's side of the border, close enough to Ukraine that every movement in the region can affect the front lines. It's a corridor Russia uses to move fuel trucks, armored vehicles, ammunition, and reinforcements toward its operations in eastern Ukraine. So both countries understood how important this route was. So basically, one side was preparing for transit, the other side was preparing for a strike. The operation kicked off long before the first explosion. Ukrainian ISR had been monitoring the dam and the surrounding infrastructure for weeks, trying to determine when Russian rotations through the Belgorod area were at their peak. They knew that Russia depended on this particular crossing to move fuel trucks, armored carriers, ammunition, and mobile command equipment deeper into the region. Every movement left signatures, thermal, electronic, and radio frequencies bouncing off relay points, and Ukraine collected all of it. By the time the strike window arrived, they weren't guessing. They had Ukrainian routines mapped out, convoy timings logged, and every critical piece of equipment pinpointed with coordinates sharpened to decimal precision. The dam became the centerpiece of the entire play. Russian forces had parked supply trucks along the embankment, some preparing to move across, others waiting for escort vehicles. The area around the dam wasn't just empty space. It held pumps, cooling systems, and a small Russian outpost that kept their supply line running. Fuel trucks, ammo carriers, and command vehicles depended on it, so damaging this point could disrupt an entire section of Russia's logistics. Russian engineers had stacked bridging equipment and communications hardware close by, creating a tight cluster of assets that Ukraine quickly identified as a highly concentrated, high-value target group. And to make matters worse for the Russian side, the convoy had bunched up after a temporary halt in movement. Now, let me tell you how Ukraine pulled off a strike so precise and deadly. At 12:03 a.m. on October 26, 2025, two Lilika 100 reconnaissance drones provided infrared images of a hidden Russian base. The heat signatures clearly showed a large amount of supplies. We are talking about 8 Euro 4320 military trucks parked, each carrying between 8,820 and 11,025 pounds of artillery ammunition. Nearby, 4 CAM 5350 fuel tankers held a total of 2,512 US gallons of diesel. These trucks and tankers were positioned beside a reinforced dome warehouse, serving as the main logistics hub for the battalion in the eastern Donetsk region. In total, the combined weight of ammunition, fuel, and other materials was over 583,160 pounds, enough to support the battalion for 48 hours without resupply. Now, behind the base stood a massive dam holding about 80 billion gallons of water, or roughly 300 million cubic meters. And so by 12:19 a.m., Ukrainian planners decided to use the dam as a weapon. The goal was to breach the Belgrade Dam's subsidiary control points and release a flood that would destroy the Russian logistics base and block river crossings. At 3:05 a.m., 3 Ukrainian HIMARS launchers were moved out of camouflaged pits in a dense forest near Chuhuiv. The target coordinates were received from the 2 Lilika 100 drones 2 minutes after a final systems check. The order to fire came from the Ukrainian 16th Field Corps headquarters. The ready lights on panel 2 came on, and all 3 crews on the launchers confirmed. Each launcher fired 2 GMLRS SER rockets, which are GPS-guided, supplied by the United States, and capable of striking beyond 93 miles. Each rocket weighed 200 pounds and had a steel casing with a shaped charge designed to penetrate reinforced concrete. 6 rockets are fired in total. They locked onto the upstream Belgrade Dam, using dual GPS plus INS navigation, the point where the Silver Sky Donetsk River met the Russian logistics route into northern Khark. At the same time, 2 UJ-22 decoy drones took off from a heat-resistant runway northwest of Volchansk. These low-cost drones were designed to fool Russian radar. Their foam airframes absorbed radar signals and emitted RF signatures that imitated cruise missiles. They flew between 492 and 656 feet at 68 to 81 miles per hour, simulating Neptune cruise missiles. Each drone continuously emitted radar and infrared signals that made it look like a real missile. An active jamming system was on board to imitate mid-course guidance and active radar returns so that X-band and span trackers could flag them as threats. Russia took the bait. At 3:08 a.m., a Russian 96 L6E radar detected the decoys and classified them as incoming Neptune missiles from the northwest. The nearby Panzer S-1 battery, 1.2 kilometers from the dam, automatically targeted the decoys. All cannons and missile tubes pivoted toward the false target. While the Panzer S-1 focused on the decoys, the 6 GMLR's ER rockets continued toward the dam, flying low and now less than 5.6 miles away from it. The rockets flew at low altitude, 148 to 197 feet, avoiding radar detection. Their GNSS guidance was turned off near the border. The rockets were now relying on terrain mapping radar and inertial navigation. Now they were traveling at 2,282 miles per hour. Algorithms were actively adjusting their paths to hit the dam at angles between 85 and 90 degrees, aiming for the thickest reinforced concrete to maximize structural damage. At 3:06 a.m., when the rockets were 1.86 miles from the dam, terrain profiling systems adjusted impact angles, and the Ukrainian army was depending on one thing: Russian defenses at low altitude would not be able to engage the rockets. But of course, their systems could track incoming threats, especially when they were so close to the convoy. Inside the Panzer S-1 control room, a junior officer noticed the incoming threats. Infrared monitors were showing 6 small, bright blips moving too fast. Another officer shouted, "That's not a Neptune, that's high speed." But unfortunately, there was no time left. Interceptor missiles were exhausted and reloading after engaging the decoys. And here's the thing, the reloading takes at least 15 seconds. And so boom! At 3:07 a.m., the first rocket struck the dam's central spillway control area. A white flash and detonation tore through 3.94 feet of reinforced concrete. 0.2 of a second later, the second rocket hit the right edge near the maintenance staircase and machinery chamber, sending sparks and slabs of concrete flying. The third, fourth, and fifth rockets hit in rapid succession, each striking critical points. The dam shook violently. At 3:07 a.m., the sixth rocket hit the reinforced left spillway valve and detonated inside the steel structure. Each of these 6 rockets carried 200 pounds of explosives. Combined, the 6 strikes delivered 1,240 pounds of shaped charges into one critical area. So, of course, cracks formed along the dam structure, and in no time, the weight of water pushed through the concrete wall. At 3:07 a.m., the dam broke. The upstream embankment collapsed within 1.5 seconds. A wall of water flowed downstream, with a plume over 98 feet high. Around 530 million gallons of water surged at speeds up to 43.5 miles per hour, carrying debris, mud, and rocks, sure to take everything on its path. And this was the exact result Ukraine was looking for. You see, 2.4 kilometers downstream at the Russian logistics base in the northern Lyman Forest, more than 80 personnel were in temporary tents. Within 5 seconds, 3 Euro 4,320 trucks were swept away. Satellite dishes collapsed, and the mobile communications mast was destroyed. The electronics bunker flooded within 20 seconds, cutting all communications across northwest Donetsk. Officers attempted to radio orders but got no response. By 3:08 a.m., the base was entirely underwater. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones were circling, recording the destruction for operational reports. This was a massive victory for Ukraine. At 3:25 a.m., the Southern Military District Command Center in Rostov-on-Don lit up with dozens of alert signals. Screens that were tracking drones, trucks, and radar installations now showed no contact. Icons representing UAVs, logistics vehicles, and forward radar units vanished from the digital maps, leaving large blank gaps. The main supply corridor, stretching from north of Lyman to East Slovian, disappeared entirely from the operational maps, cutting off one of the key arteries for moving ammunition, fuel, and personnel. Communications with the Vladimir Rivka rear base were suddenly dead. Phones, radios, and secure data links were all silent. Commanders scrambled, trying to re-establish connections, but every attempt failed. By 3:34 a.m., a high-priority report was flashing on command screens. Complete loss of logistics base due to hydrologic incident level 1, it said. The command staff immediately started making calculations. €8 4320 military trucks carrying ammunition along with 4 CAM 5350 fuel tankers had been completely destroyed. 2 command vehicles were lost. All communications infrastructure, including satellite dishes, mobile communications masts, and UAV hangars, had been swept away. The total loss of equipment was staggering. Initial casualty estimates put the number of personnel lost at around 80, mostly logistics technicians, tanker drivers, and ammunition handlers. Soldiers still on watch, or those who had been smoking near their tents, are caught in the flood's first wave. The command center staff in Rostov-on-Don quickly realized the operational consequences. With the Volostia base destroyed, resupply routes for the northern Donetsk region were now critically compromised. Artillery units waiting at the front lines would not receive ammunition on time. Fuel convoys could not reach forward positions. Medical supplies were delayed, leaving field hospitals at risk. Commanders immediately issued orders to reroute available supplies through secondary routes, but these alternatives were limited and far slower. Satellite reconnaissance and ground telemetry were requested, but heavy cloud cover combined with electromagnetic interference from Ukrainian drones and tactical flares made real-time assessment nearly impossible. Officers worked frantically to overlay old maps with the latest data, but the picture remained incomplete. Over the next 24 to 72 hours, Russian forces along the Kaverki Donuts, from Vovchansk to Lyman and northwest Sloviansk, faced acute shortages in fuel, artillery shells, and other essentials. Field engineers, sappers, and hydromechanical teams were dispatched from Shabakino and Staroskol. They were carrying floating bridges, pumping units, and repair equipment, but progress would be slow. The flood had permanently altered some riverbanks, leaving mud, rocks, and debris blocking the old supply lines. Motor pools, refueling stations, and UAV hubs would need to be relocated. Rebuilding the destroyed logistics network would take 5 to 7 days at minimum, all while combat operations continued. The sudden loss of the Volostia base sent shockwaves through the southern military district, demonstrating the scale of disruption a single, well-coordinated strike can achieve. As the waters receded, the full scale of the destruction became clear, leaving the Russian logistics network in chaos. As you can see, Ukraine is rewriting the rules of the battlefield. So the question is, what is Ukraine's next move in this struggle for control? Let us know in the comments.